Well, what I've come to see over the last, um, well, several decades of my life is that often we're faced in life with some really tough decisions, some that we don't think we'll ever have to make. I remember that when my son died from sudden infant death, there was a moment when they came to us and said, yes, we have got him on life support, but he's brain dead. And so, was that a choice? Some people would say it wasn't a choice. Some people would say it was. We chose to take him off because what kind of life would that be? And he was barely alive as it was. He's only 7 weeks old. These are the kinds of decisions that women have to make far more often than men in their daily lives, in the things that we experience as women that I think a lot of men empathize with. I certainly see it in my feed. And yet, even other women sometimes don't fully have empathy for how hard those kinds of decisions can be for women thrown in situations that they never counted on. I'm Melody Brooke. I'm a licensed professional counselor. I'm a marriage and family therapist, and I'm a mom and a grandmom. And I've had to make some hard choices in my life. I don't know very many women who haven't had to make really hard choices. Maybe not as hard as the one I made with my son, but certainly ones that would have been life altering for them, because we are the vessels of the next generation. And now it's been a long time since I was in that situation. So it's not like I'm going to be given that choice anytime soon in terms of what might or might not be carried in my womb. But I also know that there are millions and millions of women out there whose lives depend on, or the quality of their lives depend on the availability of medical care that apparently is starting to be denied women across the country. And, I'm just like baffled that we suddenly live in this country that's more a group of nations than it is a nation in and of itself. And I think that's the part that many people are not fully grasping, is the impact that's going to have on our neighbors. Our world has become so much smaller. Our nation has become so much smaller. I have friends all over the country now, mainly because of technology and staying in touch with people that I would never have been able to stay in touch with or even have relationships with like I do now, from all over the country. And so we are closer together than we ever were. And yet now we're being forced into these situations where someone that we may be really close to, may have really developed a long-term relationship with, and find out that their lives are being risked, or their loved ones' lives are being risked over decisions that are out of their own hands, over their own bodies. So today I'm obviously not talking so much about our personal experiences as I am the impact on some of the things that are happening in our country today. But each of us has to reconcile for ourselves what that means. I mean, I have a dear friend who had a pregnancy that ended at about 5 months, close to 6, 5 months. The fetus was no longer viable, and according to the rules in the state she lives in now, she wouldn't have been allowed to let that child be released from her body, even though it was not viable. She would have had to carry it for 3 to 4 more months, knowing that it was going to die before it was born. And these are the kinds of things that I don't think, And I know, and I've talked to women. In fact, I just talked to somebody a couple weeks ago when I was on a film set, and she's like, well, I'm just very, pro-life. And I'm like, I get it. I know. And I'm not going to argue with you about it because I know that this is coming from your heart. You're coming from love just like I am. The difference is that there's a limited way of thinking that some people have in regard to understanding the long-term impact, not just on society, but on each of us individually, for what that means for our lives and our loved ones' lives. What if your wife, your sister, your mother, your sister-in-law, your niece or your nephew's wife was facing a pregnancy that was an ectopic pregnancy, and in her state, she's not allowed to remove that pregnancy legally. Now, I understand most of the time that's probably not going to happen. Most states, I think most of the statutes do cover those kinds of things, but not all. In fact, there are many of the statutes that say very clearly, it doesn't matter if the woman's life is in danger or not. It doesn't matter if the baby will survive or not. We are forced to carry this pregnancy that's not viable. These are things that people are not thinking about. And I understand. I have 3 beautiful children of my own, 5 amazing grandchildren of my own. So I get it. I get that it's not an easy question because, we see the product of a healthy child when it's birthed into a healthy home. But I've also seen families where they had unwanted children who were treated horrifically. Speaking with someone recently who said, yeah, I wish my mom had gone through an abortion because as my life proceeded, I was given hell on earth, and I wish I'd not been born into that. There's so many different perspectives and so many different experiences and so many different human beings involved. And when we're talking about a woman's body, and yes, a child is always going to come from a woman's body, at least that's the way it is right now. So I understand that it feels like we need to protect that unborn child. I get that. But what about the woman? What about her life? What about her choice over what happens to her body? Her medical care? I even have spoken to these young girls who have PCOS and who the medications that they're going to be removing from their ability to have make their lives, the quality of their lives, so much better, because otherwise, once a month for a week, they are in miserable pain. These are all these complicated things that I don't think everybody thinks about. So when you are addressing and considering whether or not it makes sense to throw these rules back into the states and let them decide, think about how many of your relatives live in other states besides the one you live in. I have nieces and nephews and grandnephews and grandnieces that live in states that are extremely restrictive. I don't know what's going to happen to them. So when I get passionate about this topic, it's not because I'm pro-abortion, because I'm not. I'm totally not. I don't think it's a good idea to use it as a form of birth control. No, not many people do that. Historically, we have the data. However, when a woman makes that difficult choice, makes that decision over her own body and her own life and her own health, there is no one except God who can hold her in judgment of that. At least that's the way I see it. And it is such a personal issue because I know more and more and more, I'm seeing women in my practice who are coming in scared, coming in overwhelmed, coming in feeling like suddenly the earth has turned on its axis and all of the gains women have had and our rights to be directing our own life and our own health is being overturned by people that we'll never meet, being judged for making choices that we make by people who do not know our circumstances or our health. This is a crucial time here in America, in each of our individual states. Do we want to consider ourselves a nation, or do we want to consider ourselves a group of separate states? I thought that battle was lost 150 years ago, but apparently not. Apparently, the Confederates have finally won. Now, they may not be able to enforce slavery, but there's an awful lot of other stuff that they're going back to. And they're going to choose to take away your rights, my rights, your children's and grandchildren's rights. And the more of us that stand up and say, wait a second, this isn't the nation that I believed in. This isn't the nation that I've lived and loved and fought for in my own ways. What is it that you have believed in? What is it that you have always hung your hat on about our country, is that we led the way in human rights. And that's no longer true. That's going to mean a lot of mental health issues. It's going to mean a need for a lot more counselors, a lot more mental health professionals of all kinds. I don't think most people understand the enormous impact this is going to have on us as a society and individuals going forward unless something is done. I'm Melody Brooke. I'm a licensed professional counselor, marriage and family therapist. And I don't always talk about such heavy topics, and I promise I won't be on this soapbox every week. Doesn't mean it won't show up from time to time, because obviously I have a lot of passion about it. If you want to know more about me, I'm at melodybrooke.com. You can also find my books on Amazon and Kindle. And soon I'll have a film coming out called 15, working on that this summer. Really excited about the amazing crew and cast that I got. Blown away. And I look forward to being able to share that with you.